even if you do want to hustle like mad and work all the hours, and there's nothing wrong with that, that's your goal and that's what makes you happy. Gary is an unusual animal in that he seems to have amazing, and he'll say this, entrepreneur DNA and the intuition to pick the right things to do. I wonder if that's something that you cultivate over time or not. And if it's the latter, then maybe his approach won't work for a lot of people.
Welcome to Corporate Warrior, the podcast that brings you the best advice on how to improve your health, optimize performance, and maximize productivity. With your host, Lawrence Neal.
This episode is brought to you by ARX, the most innovative, efficient, and effective all-in-one exercise machines I've ever seen. I was really impressed with my ARX workout. The intensity and adaptive resistance was unlike anything I've ever experienced. I love how the machine enables you to increase the negative load to fatigue target muscles more quickly, and I love how the workouts are effortlessly quantified. The software tracks maximum force output, rate of work, total amount of work done, and more in front of you on screen, allowing you to compete with your previous performance to give you and your clients real-time motivation. The ARX uses a computer-controlled motor to give you the exact amount of resistance your clients need 100% of the time. This means that the resistance can never become dangerous, is intuitive and simple to use, and can provide you with all of the results you and your clients are looking for in a fraction of the time. ARX is highly effective and efficient in delivering all of the benefits of exercise, including increased strength, muscle mass, cardiovascular conditioning, bone mineral density, and injury recovery. As well as being utilized by many high-intensity training trainers to deliver highly effective and efficient workouts to their clients, ARX comes highly recommended by world-class trainers and brands, including Bulletproof, Tony Robbins, and Ben Greenfield Fitness. To find out more about ARX and how you can get $1,000 off software licensing when you place an order, that's right guys, $1,000 off, please go to arxfit.com and mention Corporate Warrior in the How Did You Hear About Us field. So again, to get $1,000 off software licensing when you order, head on over to arxfit.com and enter Corporate Warrior in the How Did You Hear About Us field. Hey guys, hope you're well. It's Lawrence and welcome to another episode of Corporate Warrior, the podcast that teaches you how to optimize your high-intensity strength training protocol and your HIIT business to help you achieve your health, fitness, and business goals. My former guests include health and fitness giants like Mark Sisson, Rob Wolf, and Ben Greenfield, through to high-intensity training specialists like Dr. Doug McGuff, Drew Bay, and Roger Schwab, through to highly successful business owners like Noah Kagan and Luke Carlson. This is an in-between-isode of yours truly, and for those that don't know me, my name is Lawrence. I'm the founder of the Corporate Warrior podcast. I have used evidence-based nutrition and exercise and productivity, business and sales skills to optimize my health, lifestyle, close many multi-million pound deals in a former life as a B2B salesperson, and build an online business on the side. Now, if you're a crazy type A personality like me, then you're probably in your head a lot of the time, and this can be really bad for business, especially if you're wrestling with what to do day to day. And social media is a real problem in this regard. Social media has become a key communication tool for a lot of businesses, and it's difficult to know how to leverage it in the best way for you, your goals, and your lifestyle. In my own struggle with this, I tried to find some content on someone who has reconciled the Tim Ferriss approach and Gary Vaynerchuk approach, as they both have very different approaches to using social media, and I couldn't find anyone who'd created the content to reconcile both of their approaches. So what did I do? I created my own short in-between-isode to help reconcile these for myself and for you guys. So in this episode, you will learn exactly why context is so important, how Tim and Gary are often quite misunderstood and have actually more in common than most think, how to use yourself and your goals to design your social media strategy, and much, much more. For all of the show notes and links for this episode and all episodes, please go to corporatewarrior.org. Don't forget to hang around at the end for your free gift from me. And now I give you yours truly on Tim Ferriss versus Gary Vaynerchuk. Hey guys, it's Lawrence here from Corporate Warrior, and I'm going to attempt to reconcile the viewpoints offered by Tim Ferriss and Gary Vaynerchuk. I did a bit of research myself to try and deal with some of my own inner conflicts on their approach to business. And I listened to a few things and read some articles online, but no one, from what I could see, has, in my opinion, created a piece of content which compares both of their strategies and has done so from a position of context, so having consumed a lot of their content. So as many of you know, I've been a Tim Ferriss fanboy for years. I've probably read almost every blog post he's ever written. I've got all his books. I've probably listened to almost all of his podcasts. And I have a similar, although not quite to the same extent, obsession with Gary V's content, Gary Vaynerchuk. And more so lately, I've consumed a ton of his work and found it incredibly inspirational. However, it did for me create some inner conflict in that it started confusing me as to where I should be focusing my time, because I think on the surface, both entrepreneurs look like they are polar opposites. If you haven't consumed a ton of their content to get context, I think it's easy to make the assumption that they disagree on practically everything. But as I was saying, once you've actually consumed a lot of their content, and this has started to become clearer to me the more and more of Gary's stuff I consume, you start to see a ton of overlap between both guys. There are still some areas where they seem to disagree or differ somewhat, but there's a ton of overlap as well. So Tim Ferriss is famous for 4 hour this, that, and everything. So 4 hour work week, 4 hour chef, 4 hour body. He's also got a very successful podcast called The Tim Ferriss Show and a successful blog. I followed Tim for years. Tim often gets misunderstood. People that have read perhaps the front page of the 4 hour work week and never read the damn book assume that he is lazy and he's trying to promote this work minimization, idle lifestyle type approach, sit on a beach with a laptop type of scenario where you're working, well, as per the book title, 4 hours a week, and that is all, when that's actually bullshit and not exactly what he's going for. He's giving you the tools and the ability to design potentially a 4 hour work week. But the real purpose of the book is to help you, help the reader 10x per hour output. So significantly increase productivity to enable you to achieve your goals, whatever they might be. And I know this annoys Tim a lot because he gets so many skeptics who've never read the damn book, which frustrates me, as you can tell, because I hate that kind of judgment. And, I think we do it too much. I even do it still, and I try and catch myself when I do it. Context is so important, just watching one video or, looking at, the front cover of someone's book really doesn't give you much information as to who they really are and what they're about. So in a nutshell, I guess that's Tim's approach to business. It's all about taking an approach which is effective and efficient and at reaching your specific goals. Gary Vaynerchuk, again, is one who is misunderstood quite a lot. And it's probably even more so with Gary because he creates so much content that his surface persona is more emphasized. So if you've consumed even just a few of his or watched a few of his videos or consumed only a little bit of his content, you'll know that his goal is to buy the New York Jets. And he goes on about that because he's all about the journey and the game and succeeding. Now, in order for him to buy the Jets, it's an incredible feat, an incredible endeavor. It's probably going to cost him billions, maybe even trillions, who knows. He has to work all the hours. He has to be very, very productive and commit a ton of his time to that goal because it's just so grand. I don't think anyone's of the mindset that you could buy the New York Jets having only worked 4 hours a week, But Gary is never saying this is what everyone should do. He's never saying, you should work 150 hours a week. What he's saying, and this is actually, something he said, is it really irritates him when people don't map their actions to their mouth. So someone's saying, oh, I'm going to be the greatest all-time entrepreneur in X field, and yet they're, working 40 to 60 hours a week, he'd be like, well, you're never going to achieve that working that number of hours per week, regardless of how effective each hour is. And I would probably agree with Gary on that. I think if you're going for kind of all-time entrepreneur status, and trying to create a very, very, very big business, then you probably will have to make a lot of sacrifices and work a ton of hours. But back to what I'm saying, so this whole map your actions to your mouth thing, Gary's quite clear. He says, if you're happy to earn 100K a year, which is obviously significant for a lot of people, but have a work-life balance, so have that time to spend with your family and do those things that you enjoy, those more recreational activities or fill in the blank, then great. If that makes you happy, then reducing your work hours isn't an issue. But again, just to reiterate, if you want to buy the Jets or the New York Knicks or fill in the blank sports team, then it's going to require a lot of grind and hustle. So it comes down to, what are your goals? What are you about? And mapping your actions and your work ethic to that approach. So to summarize on this part, I think if you've only watched a couple videos or just the one video or whatever, with these guys, it's very easy to take one moment, especially with someone like Gary Vaynerchuk, one moment, one video, one sentence, one speech, and draw a false conclusion from that. And because all of this is so highly subjective, all of this has to be applied within a specific context for it to make sense. And, it's sometimes the problem with the fact that we're, including myself, creating so much content these days, and because we want to get our message out there, we want to grow our businesses, but our opinions change. Our approach to business and life changes. It's always evolving as we learn, and that's a beautiful thing. But it does mean that we may disagree with something we said 2 years ago, and which is now on the internet forever. And that doesn't mean that it should be taken down. It just means that, the stuff that you learn now, like you watch a video with one of these guys or even listen to one of my podcasts, it just means to keep an open mind. So, continue to learn, consume new high quality content, but always be ready to pivot and change your opinion if the evidence presents itself. I think that's just a really good place to be and a good mindset. Otherwise, you can become too attached to a specific principle, and you're never really open to, and that can stop you from growing. So going back to comparing these two guys, I think one of the areas where they do seem to depart, and I think a lot of you might agree with me on this, is the use of social media. Social media has blown up lately, and it's kind of the go-to marketing channel for a lot of entrepreneurs today. So both have a fairly different approach on this, and I'm going to give my interpretation and elaborate on that. So Tim Ferriss is known for advocating high quality content, is the best SEO. So if you're a blog or a podcast or some sort of content platform, he advocates producing longer form, very high quality content less frequently. So maybe posting, if you're on a blog, for instance, posting twice a week, and creating it to be evergreen so that it's relevant forever and that it grows in popularity over time. And he is convinced that that is the best SEO. That is the most effective form of marketing you can actually do for your message. And this links in with an article written by Kevin Kelly called 1000 True Fans, which Tim is a massive fan of and talks about all the time, which is basically predicated on the notion that in order to grow your business successfully and never have to worry about money and marketing ever again, you need to convert 1,000 people who become huge fans of your work. They buy everything you put out, they share every piece of content you create. And in doing so, by creating that fan base, you will actually build your audience much faster and build a better quality audience because they will be converting people for you. So that is his main approach, I think, to marketing a business. And, with that, he suggests that you don't necessarily have to be on all the social media platforms. I've heard Tim say things like, you don't have to do all that dancing. And I think he's onto something there. But that's not to say he doesn't think that social media has its place. Of course, social media is massively important for even the 1000 True Fan concept, because that's how we're all communicating now. So if it didn't exist, they wouldn't be able to share the content on their platform so easily with other people. And also there's obviously, ways to use social media to target your audience effectively. And Tim is a fan of picking maybe one or two social media platforms and really understanding those platforms and how to use them for your specific business. And then, test and retest and so on. So if you've got a product or service business that you're looking to grow, then Tim may advocate, in something like the 4-Hour Work Week, to target on a single platform, let's say Facebook ads, or Google AdWords, and continually test and figure out what works and measure return on investment. And the 4-Hour Work Week would elaborate on this by, Tim's view on, or lessons on, how you can eliminate tasks and streamline the business and automate, and just basically simplify things and keep things as streamlined as possible to achieve your desired outcome. So from that, it would seem like Tim has a much more targeted and focused approach when it comes to the use of social media. Now, Gary Vaynerchuk is certainly on a surface level comes across as promoting that one should be on all the platforms as much as possible all the time, and even go as far as testing new platforms as they become available. So he's literally said, visit the App Store every day, every morning, download 3 to 5 of the latest apps or social media apps or fill in the blank, and test them. Start driving some of your audience to those platforms to see how they interact and what the results are like. However, again, context is key. And you'll notice that Gary is a big advocate of growth hacking and deploying energy where he is going to get the highest return on investment. So, for instance, he's big right now on voice. He thinks that voice, being something that we can consume, such as podcasts while we're doing something else, is a massive time saver for people and is going to grow significantly. He thinks that voice is going to be one of the biggest arbitrage in the kind of attention space. And what I believe he means by that is it's going to take from other areas, and more users are going to grow in that space. Another area he's big on is Facebook video and Facebook Live and these platforms. And so even though, Gary seems to be sometimes advocating the usage of every single platform out there, he does seem to prioritize based on how he thinks these platforms can be used in the best way. And he does seem to double down in those areas. So I don't think he's just on every single platform. That being said, he seems like he's on every single platform. But on those platforms, he is deploying the energy in the right way, and which is important to recognize that. So overall, Gary Vaynerchuk seems to encourage a lot more social than Tim Ferriss. And I think there is an important thing I've learned listening to both guys on this, is that Tim seems to be more interested in measurable return on investment. So if you're on social media and you're deploying content there, why are you doing that? What is it providing you in terms of ROI? Whereas Gary V is far more pattern recognition, intuition based. So he doesn't seem to care that much about measurable return on investment. His belief is that the ROI on social media is much harder to measure. Even if you're on, fill in the blank platform and you've only got 6 users, one of those users could be the CEO of your perfect customer, which obviously long term could create a massive ROI. So I do understand Gary's point there. However, for me personally, Tim Ferriss's approach to social media management is far more sustainable. Even if you do want to hustle like mad and work all the hours, and there's nothing wrong with that if that's your goal and that's what makes you happy, there is still an unlimited number of opportunities and things to do. So I still think it can be really overwhelming with trying to figure out options. Now, Gary is just a unusual animal in that he seems to have amazing, and he'll say this, entrepreneur DNA and the intuition to pick the right things to do, or the most effective things. And I'm still fairly early on in my entrepreneurial career, and I do have some of that intuition sometimes, but obviously nowhere near to the degree that Gary does. And I wonder if that's something that you cultivate over time or not. And if it's the latter, then maybe his approach won't work for a lot of people. So for me, being far more reductionist seems to be more realistic in the long term. So some more takeaways. I was following Gary for a long time recently. I was binging on loads of his content and absolutely loving it because he just motivates the crap out of me, because he's such an authentic and driven guy. It's so infectious. And I started feeling like shit, should I be on like every single social media platform? Am I not doing enough? And it created a bit of inner conflict for me, because I'd been, previously consuming a lot of work from Tim Ferriss that seemed to be quite antithetical to Gary's message. And then Gary had Seth Godin on his Ask Gary Vee show. And Seth Godin is probably one of the most, if not the most, famous marketer today. Very, very successful author. I think he's written like 18 New York Times bestsellers or something, and has a very, very popular blog. Now, Seth made a really good point on Gary Vee's show, which is that social media companies are optimized for distraction. So there are billions and billions of dollars invested in the social media platforms to keep you there, to keep your attention there. Every single thing they do is deliberate. So the interface, the very fact that the notifications are bright red, these things are all deliberate. They're designed to stimulate your dopamine response and keep bringing you back or keeping you there as long as possible. They're not designed to make you more productive is the takeaway. And you have to be aware of that, because otherwise, social media, in my opinion, can be so destructive. It can really, really kill your mental health, damage your relationships, and really take you away, in this context, take you away from doing your art, from running your business, doing your thing. Unless you're using it in the right way, it can completely destroy your productivity. And I really do believe that. And I think sometimes Gary maybe gets a little bit carried away with, he's kind of an advocate of people being on their phones all day. He doesn't think there's anything wrong with that. But me personally, I just don't think it's a healthy activity. I think you can see that. I think that's quite self-evident today. So design your life. There's nothing wrong with having a crazy hustle. I feel like that sometimes. I'm a ambitious, driven person, and sometimes I feel like I could just work all the time, and sometimes I want to work an entire day, morning through night, and I don't think there's anything wrong with doing that on occasion if that's your desire and ambition. I think where it can become a problem, certainly for me, is where it starts affecting the other areas of my life, like, not getting enough exercise or moving enough, not spending enough quality time with the people that are important in my life, not looking after the other aspects of my mental health, and just doing other things that make me a happier person. because ultimately there's always more we can be doing from a work perspective, and it can never end. So I do think one has to really become more self-aware and understand what makes you happy and how you like to spend your time and what your ideal life looks like. Again, I've talked about this before, but Tim Ferriss in a 4-hour work week, he has something called a dreamlining approach, which is a way to work out what cash flow is required to be what you want to be, do what you want, and go where you want, etc. And I think it's a really useful exercise because it will help you figure out what, in terms of cash flow, is required to meet those goals. So that's a good way of determining your work output on a weekly basis. But again, if you love the game, like Gary's always talking about, and you just love being in it for whatever reason, then all the power to you. And if you want to work all the hours and that's what makes you happy, then there's nothing wrong with that. So determine your goals, and that will determine your activity. Again, Gary wants to buy the New York Jets. He can't. He probably can't do that unless he does really commit himself fully. But with all of this, you have to do you. And I think it's so easy to be so seduced by gurus. And these guys online and people like Tim and Gary they're just so infectious and positive, but they're just throwing so many ideas at you that it's like you just stop trusting yourself. You get so seduced by their messages that you kind of get removed from yourself. And I think it's really important to collect yourself and take a moment to think, what do I think is the best thing to do? Like, screw those guys for a second. What works for me? Where am I at in life? What's important to me? How am I going to manage this? Because I think at the end of the day, even guys like Tim and Gary are to an extent winging it. No one knows exactly what works 100% of the time for every person. They don't. And that's why, and they both say this, they're both very humble, and they both say, test it for yourself, take it with a pinch of salt, figure out what works for you. And that's what you have to do. You have to test in your own life and trust yourself, trust your own judgment, and don't get stressed out when you start hearing a lot of conflict between gurus and confusion about what to do. I think if you kind of come back to what your core values are and what you have fun doing and what your goals are, that should help guide you as to what activities are most important to do in your life and business. So hopefully this has been helpful for you guys. I just personally have had some inner conflict trying to reconcile both approaches from both guys. And I'll leave you with this. Bruce Lee said, absorb what is useful, reject what is useless, and add what is essentially your own. Hope you guys found this useful. For all of the show notes, links and resources, please go to corporatewarrior.org, and on there you will find this episode, but you'll also find a list of all of my episodes with very, very detailed show notes. And until next time, guys, thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed that episode. Before you head off, head on over to corpwarrior.com, that's CORP warrior.com, to get your free high-intensity training Google Progress chart and ebook with 6 interview transcripts of some of my top guests, including Dr. Doug McGuff, Drew Bay, and Bill Simone, on how to optimize muscle gain, fat loss, and overall health in an efficient, effective, and sustainable way. These transcripts are deliberately not verbatim. Instead, they've been transcribed in an easy read format to make it more enjoyable and easier for you to quickly pick out what you need and start getting results. To get your ebook, head on over to corpwarrior.com, enter your email address, then check your email for an email from me with a confirmation link. Once you click the link, you will be instantly redirected to a PDF version of the transcripts. This episode is brought to you by ARX, the most innovative, efficient, and effective all-in-one exercise machines I've ever seen. I was really impressed with my ARX workout. The intensity and adaptive resistance was unlike anything I've ever experienced. I love how the machine enables you to increase the negative load to fatigue target muscles more quickly, and I love how the workouts are effortlessly quantified. The software tracks maximum force output, rate of work, total amount of work done, and more in front of you on screen, allowing you to compete with your previous performance to give you and your clients real-time motivation. The ARX uses a computer-controlled motor to give you the exact amount of resistance your clients need 100% of the time. This means that the resistance can never become dangerous, is intuitive and simple to use, and can provide you with all the results you and your clients are looking for in a fraction of the time. ARX is highly effective and efficient in delivering all of the benefits of exercise, including increased strength, muscle mass, cardiovascular conditioning, bone mineral density, and injury recovery. As well as being utilized by many high-intensity training trainers to deliver highly effective and efficient workouts to their clients, ARX comes highly recommended by world-class trainers and brands, including Bulletproof, Tony Robbins, and Ben Greenfield Fitness. To find out more about ARX and how you can get $1,000 off software licensing when you place an order, that's right guys, $1,000 off, please go to arxfit.com and mention Corporate Warrior in the How Did You Hear About Us field. So again, to get $1,000 off software licensing when you order, head on over to arxfit.com and enter Corporate Warrior in the How Did You Hear About Us field.